Good morning, people. Happy Wednesday. Hope you guys are doing well. And we're going to change gears a little bit this morning. We're going to open up with a little bit of Mariners talk because the baseball season is over. And in baseball, once the season ends, free agency stuff kicks off very quickly. So we got to talk a little bit about the decisions in front of the Mariners and what they need to do, what I think they should take a look at, and the opportunities that this offseason affords this team because the time is now, right? Like this Mariners team has won 90 games 2 years in a row. They got some young talent that's only going to get better. They made the playoffs finally. They won a playoff series, and they played Houston tough in that series. I know they got swept, but it was a competitive series, and you have to say, as of right now, they're not that far away from being able to compete with the team that kind of cruised to a title. So now is the time to do whatever it takes to make the team ready to really take that Houston team down. Because the first obstacle in your way is winning this division with Houston in it. And Houston, even though you played them tough in that 3-game series, they won the division by what, 16 games? So you got a lot of ground to make up here. So we got to improve the team a little bit this offseason. Real quick, some of the decisions we have to make on outgoing players, like it's nothing huge, I don't think. You've got like Mitch Haniger. That one's interesting. He had an injury-plagued season that wasn't particularly good, so I don't think it's going to cost that much money. And I think there's a good chance you're able to keep him for cheap. So if you keep him, that's fine, but you can't depend on him because he's been so injury-prone in his career. You have guys like Adam Frazier, who I'm ready to see him go. I don't see any point. I don't see where he gets that much better as a player at this point in his career. I don't know how he ever does better than being like a league average hitter with bad fielding and half decent speed and no power. So that's fine. You got guys like Carlos Santana. I can go either way on Santana. If you keep him around for cheap, it's fine. If you don't, it's also fine. Nothing that I'm overly concerned about on that front. So let's talk about the guys we can bring in here. How can we make the team a little bit better? So first, the rotation in my mind is pretty much set, or as set as it's going to be. You've got 3 potential aces: Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby. Robbie Ray for the moment is still here, and he's fine as a number 4. And then as a 5, you can either have Marco or Flexen, whichever. So that's fine. The bullpen, this team has shown an ability to piece together a really good bullpen out of not super duper stars. So I'm going to trust whatever they do there. They've earned that. So we're talking about the lineup, the position players. We're talking about the bats because the fielding's pretty good, right? Mariners had a really good defense this year. Mariners defense, one of the best in the league. A little bit drop off at the end of the year, but overall still really good. So we're talking about the lineup now. Let's go through it. Catcher, we're good at catcher. Cal, one of the young upcoming superstars at catcher in this league. Great power hitter, becoming a better overall hitter, good behind the plate. So catcher's fine. You've got some quality backup options like Torrens played well at the end of the year. Tom Murphy was playing really well before he got hurt. Catcher's good. Maybe you bring in a little bit of depth, but you don't have to. First baseman, if we decide to keep rocking with Ty France, that's fine. I know he didn't finish the season strong, but he was definitely playing hurt. So unless we see something with France's development as a player that we really don't like, I think we're going to roll with that, and I think that's totally fine. You want to bring in a little depth, that's fine, but that depth could easily be just bring back Santana for cheap. No problem. Third base, mostly fine. Suarez had a great year for us. I know he's getting older. It doesn't feel amazing. He's now going to be on the wrong side of 30. So you are looking at a guy who is getting older and a guy who his game can fall off very quickly because he's a pure power hitter. He's a guy who strikes out sometimes 5 times in a game and then in another game will hit 3 home runs. Well, if those home runs start turning into deep flyouts, you don't have that much. But for the moment, Suarez, totally fine. If you want to bring in a little bit of depth behind him, okay. But you do have Toro, who has proven to be okay at third base. You have a couple other utility guys. It's okay. Outfield, it's basically all about the Julio show. Obviously, you're feeling great about his career right now. Had an amazing rookie campaign. figures to get a lot better in the coming years. So center field is locked up. It's everything else that we need to take a look at here. Middle infield, we need somebody. We either need a second baseman to replace Frazier, or we need a shortstop to bump Crawford over to second base. So we need a middle infielder, one way or the other. It's fine. I don't care which one it is. Crawford can play second base. He basically plays second base all the time because we shift a lot. Or we did. We can't shift anymore. But Crawford playing second base is something I have no problem with, and I hope this team is prepared for the possibility of doing it, because I think it makes sense. So you need a second baseman or a shortstop, and you need at least one, maybe two corner outfielders. Maybe you can get by with a utility player at one of the corner spots, but the other corner spot needs help. Even if you bring back Mitch Haniger, even if you bring back Jesse Winker, I don't know what's going on with Winker, you still need help there because those guys cannot be relied on. I think Winker, if he comes back, will have a big season at the plate, but you don't want him out there in the field. Even when he's healthy, he's not particularly good in the field. And do you really want to try to get by with a platoon of Haggerty and Dylan Moore and Taylor Trammell and Jared Kelenic all year? Not if you don't have to. So let's start with the middle infield. Let's take a look at some options here, starting with the second baseman. And I'm going to say this real quick. The second base options are not great, which is why I hope this team is open to the possibility of moving Crawford to second base. The two guys who jump out to me at all who have played second base, who could come in for the Mariners would be, number one is Gene Segura, our old buddy. He's coming off a pretty good year in Philadelphia. He had an ops plus of 104. He's good in the field. He was better the previous year, ops plus of 111. Little bit of power, not a lot. Little bit of speed on the base path, stealing bases. He has a high average he gets on base, but he's also missed a lot of games over the past 3 years. He's had one kind of full season, 2021, and he's about to turn 33, so I'm certainly not in love with it, but he's basically, as of right now, he's Adam Frazier, but better. He's a little bit faster, he hits for a higher average, he's got a little more power, but it's kind of the same thing as Adam Frazier. The other thing to remember is he's going to be going from the NL to the AL. Now, he's played in the AL before because he was with us for those 2 seasons back in 2017, 2018, but he might have to adjust back to the AL style because he's been in the AL for 4 years. When he went from the AL to the NL, he actually had a pretty lackluster season, 2019, and then he was able to play a little bit better over the last 3. So that's probably my favorite option. The only other pure second baseman would be Colton Wong from the, I believe, Milwaukee Brewers. He's kind of in a similar boat. He's getting up there in age. He's going to be 32 by the time you get him. Not a lot of power, a little bit. He hits for a decent average. Ops plus the last 2 years has been solid. But he spent his whole career in the NL. He's never been great. His ops plus, I mean, he's coming off a career year. But other than that, this most recent season where he did have an ops plus of 118, he's never been above 110. It's definitely not the sexiest. He is good in the field. He won a Golden Glove 3 years ago, despite missing most of the season. And he won a Golden Glove the year before as well for a full season, or almost full season. So good in the field, decent bat, but a little bit of a drop-off, and you have a guy who's basically better than Frazier, but not by a lot. Okay, now let's get to the shortstops. This is where things get a little more fun for me, which is why, even though I don't care, personally, either way, I do think that the situation that the Mariners are in behooves them to consider moving Crawford to second. You have Carlos Correa, kind of icky because he was a Astro, but this guy is a lot better than any second baseman you can get on free agency right now. This guy has good power. He's had almost 50 home runs over the last 2 years. Played in Minnesota last year and Houston in his career the years before that. So he knows how to play in the AL. He's used to the AL. His ops plus 140 and 131 the last 2 seasons. Made the All-Star game. Pretty good in the field. It looks like he won the Golden Glove 2 years ago. He doesn't have a ton of speed on the base paths or anything like that, but all around really solid player. He's giving you some pop. He's giving you that high average. Remember, the shift is going to get banned. His batting average might jump up to like 300 this year just because of that, even if he does all the same stuff. Relatively durable over the last 2 years. He's played most games. And if you want to really bowl people over, a guy like Carlos Correa would definitely go a long way towards doing that. You've also got Trea Turner. He's somebody who can play shortstop and second baseman as well, so you could get him and not necessarily compromise whatever you're building with Crawford in the field. And he's only going to be 30 by the time the next year is actually a couple months in. So this guy made the All-Star team the last 2 years. He actually won the batting title 2 years ago. Ops plus 145 2 years ago and 121 last year. He wasn't as good in 2022 as he was in 2021, but still a very good player. Hits for a high average, has hit well above 300 several times in his career, hit almost 300 last year, got pretty decent power, can give you 20 to 30 home runs, and this would be another superstar signing that, if you made it, would let everybody know that you are taking this very seriously. Strikeouts were a little bit high last year, but he makes up for it in many ways. So Trea Turner would be another home run swing. And the last home run string I see, and this is my favorite right here, Xander Bogaerts from the Boston Red Sox. This is a guy who has batted 300 collectively over the last 4 years, basically. He's only had significant missed time one of those years. He's made the All-Star game the other 3 years. And remember, the shift is going away. This guy might hit 330, 340 just because the shift is going away. He gives you some power. He can give you 20, 30 home runs in a full year. Had a little bit of a down year with power last year, but still hit 307 and had a good ops plus, 130. He played in the AL last year, so no adjustment. And he's pretty decent in the field as well. So, boom. This is my favorite middle infield signing we could make. And you're going to have to break the checkbook open, but that's what you got to do sometimes. All right, going down the list a little bit more, you've got probably my last highly considered middle infielder, Dansby Swanson, from the Atlanta Braves. And this guy made the All-Star team last year, played in every game, had almost 700 at-bats. Ops plus was 115, so solid hitter. Gives you decent power, okay average, hitting about 280 last year. Oh, he's not going to give you the same batting average as a guy like Xander, but he is going to give you roughly similar power, and he's going to give you a good glove. He won the Golden Glove last year, considered to be one of the better defensive players in the league. And he's also got a little bit of speed as well. Not a ton, but a little bit. And while I don't think he's as good as the previous 3 guys, if you got Dansby Swanson, I would definitely look at that as a move that shows that you're taking this very seriously. Okay, so those are the middle infielders who caught my attention in free agency. Let's take a look at some of the outfielders. And by the way, we're going to finish up with a utility player who's caught my attention. We have Wil Myers first, and this is kind of a utility guy. He also plays a little bit on the infield, but not so much middle infield. He is primarily an outfielder from the San Diego Padres. He's about to turn 32, so age is a bit of a concern, but he's had an above-average bat the last 3 years, and especially in 2020, he actually had a monster season, 160 ops plus, was in the MVP race, but since then, he's just been an above-average hitter, some power, but not much, and he's basically going to give you what Haniger would give you, just hopefully with a little more reliability. Maybe a little less power than Haniger, and admittedly he has missed some games over the last few years, but you're getting more stability with him than you did with Haniger, and hopefully you're getting roughly similar output. So this is not a sexy option, admittedly. Wil Myers is not at the top of my list for a corner outfielder, but he's solid, established, seems pretty decent in the field, not amazing or anything, but capable, better than Winker. And if you're trying to maybe set yourself up to where you're getting a depth player and you're getting another corner outfielder, maybe this is a good option for that depth signing. This is another guy who's played most of his career in the NL. There might be a transitionary period, which that's not exciting. So this is, I'm going to list this under like my last resort kind of corner outfielder guy, but he should be a consideration. He is a good player having a good career. Next up, I want to talk about Andrew Benintendi as a potential corner outfielder. He's had a pretty good career, still relatively young. He's going to turn 29 midseason next year. Played on a few different teams, but made the All-Star game last year across a season. Mostly played on the Royals, also a little bit on the Yankees. Had maybe or very close to his best offensive season ever, 120 ops plus. 2018, he was a little bit better than that, but he's definitely a good player. He won a Golden Glove in 2021, so seems to be pretty good in the field. He gives you a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, not anything over the top in either of those areas, but last year he did hit over 300. So when you keep in mind that they're getting rid of the shift, which should play to the advantage of most batters just in general, I think that Andrew Benintendi would be somebody you could start most games in left field and feel pretty good about it. And he is going to be pretty high on my list as well as somebody the Mariners should go after. Next name is Jurickson Profar, currently of the San Diego Padres. And the nice thing about Profar, he can play left field, second baseman, and shortstop. I look at him as more of a corner outfielder, but he can also give you some stuff at second base and shortstop in a pinch. Last year, he had an ops plus of 111, so pretty good bat. Decent-ish power, little bit of power, nothing over the top, but he gives you decent, power in terms of like doubles. Little bit of speed, but not a ton. Not a great fielder, but this is a nice option if you're trying to platoon up, or maybe you splurged massively on a guy like Carlos Correa and you don't have a ton of money left over for the corner outfield problem. He's a reasonable option. And the concern with him would be he spent 3 years in the National League, and you can see he actually had a huge down year in 2020. Actually, let me get that wrong. Let me get that right. He actually had the big down year in 2021 when he transitioned from the AL to the NL. So is it possible he would come back to the AL and struggle again? I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a ton of rhyme or reason to his career so far. You might notice he actually didn't even play baseball, or he didn't get in a game in 2014, 2015, so weird career. But he's only going to be 30, so not bad. This one, however, overall is probably my favorite, Brandon Nimmo. And if you want to really go crazy to try to make your outfield a little bit better, Brandon Nimmo, I think, should be the guy. This is going to cost some money. It's not going to be easy to get him out of New York, but this guy has spent the last 3 years batting close to 300. Now, it was in the NL, but this guy should translate to the AL fine. When they get rid of the shift, by the way, these numbers should go up. He will probably become a 300 hitter once the shift goes away. Over the last 3 years, his ops plus has been collectively about 135, 136, so well above average. Not a lot of power, but he does offer you an incredibly high batting average. He does offer some very nice stuff in terms of his ability to get on extra bases. This is probably my favorite option. It would cost a lot of money, admittedly. I don't know if you could do Nimmo and Xander, but that would be my goal right now. If you tell me, what do you want to see the Mariners do in this upcoming offseason, I would say bring me Xander, bring me Brandon Nimmo, and I will live with the rest. If they do that, even if things don't go well, then I'm going to be satisfied with what the team attempted to do. He's got a great batting eye. He draws a lot of walks. Comparatively speaking, not a ton of strikeouts. Did have 116 this most recent season, but he does a pretty good job of working pitch counts. And not a great fielder necessarily, in my estimation, but should be fine. Nothing terrible, nothing awful. Jock Peterson would be another name that I take a look at here. He's about to turn 31, so age is starting to become a concern. But he probably just had his best season. Ops plus of 144 for the Giants, made the All-Star team. Excuse me. Some pretty decent power years. I don't know if he's going to give you like 30 home runs now, but he gives you some decent power. Decent batting average as well. Nothing approaching like 300 or anything. Pretty okay batting eye. Just a good all-around hitter is Jock Peterson. Decent fielder as well. This is a quality option in the outfield, I think. I would have no problem with going after Jock Peterson and making him the cornerstone of your attempts to improve your outfield. You've got Michael Conforto. He is coming off a year where he didn't play his best. This is kind of a buy low option, right? Because in 2021, his Ops Plus was a flat 100, average. And the year before, he only played 54 games. He played very well, but I don't know how much that means. You have to go back to 2019 to find the last time he played a full, really good season. 33 home runs, 150 games, batting average up close to 260, drawing walks at a pretty high rate. So this might be a little bit of a buy low option if you're trying to gamble a little bit, which I would rather not do. But I will say that he's shown the ability to be really good in the past. He's only going to be 29. So Michael Conforto would be, I don't want to say near the top of my list, but he's certainly on the list and deserves some credit. Last name I'm going to go after here is Brandon Drury, and this is a utility player who can play third base, second base, outfield. You could probably play him at shortstop if you really needed to. So he solves multiple problems. He just turned 30 a couple months ago, so he's not old. He's not young either, but he's not old yet. And if you take a look at his career and what he's done, he's very good. He had a very nice year in 2022 across the Reds and the Padres, Ops Plus of 122. Now, he's spent the last couple years in the NL, which is a little bit concerning, but I'm not going to get too worked up about that when he's shown the ability to play fairly well in both leagues. Although, granted, his career didn't really take off completely until he got to the Mets in 2021. So, yeah, I guess you could call him a little bit of a late bloomer, but what he's done over the last 2 years, the most recent year in particular, is quite impressive. And it seems like he's a pretty good defensive player as well, and he can play those multiple positions. So those are the guys that I, as a Mariners fan, would like to see this team target. Appealing options on both sides. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to come away with a good option for the middle infield and a good option for the corner outfield. Both. I don't want to go into 2023 depending on Haggerty and Dylan Moore and Kelnick to platoon in a corner outfield spot. I don't want to go into the season praying that Mitch Haniger stays healthy. I don't want to go into the season with Adam Frazier or Abraham Toro or something like that at second base where I just feel like there's no ceiling here. I'm just praying that we can eke out like 100 Ops Plus from our second base position, and I would feel lucky if we did that. Like, no, I'm trying to go for something a little bit better than that. And I feel like this team will be great. If we can bring in my two dream options, which is Xander and Nimmo, those two guys, then I feel like this team could challenge the Astros for the division, and I think we'd win 100 games. A few other things would have to go right as well, but reasonable assumptions, right? You need Suarez to continue to play at a decently high level. You need your three ace pitchers to become aces or borderline aces. You need Julio and Cal to improve, which they should because they're so young. But if those things happen, then I believe that a team like that, with Xander added and with Nimmo added, can win 100-plus games and challenge the Astros for the division. So that's my call right now. Let me know what you guys think. Go Mariners. I will see you guys later today. It's going to be a fun off season.